Hey everyone, wanted to start this video off looking at the fear and greed index in a bull market when we're in extreme fear. Is it a good time to buy or sell? Obviously, hopefully everyone knows the answer is to buy. We will be looking at the charts. I do think we have the possibility of potentially dropping one more time past a major zone. We'll look at some previous times that occurred, the recovery we've seen during bull markets, and then, in my opinion, leaving many people left very sad because they either sold or did not buy more because they were hesitant because of the structure that broke to the downside. I think that we could potentially see something like that, but we are currently seeing a descending wedge, the second option that we talked about for weeks and weeks that we were looking at. The first one was an ascending zone. Unfortunately, that broke down, so now we are in the second option. But first off, we do see last month extreme greed. We saw obviously a very strong push to the upside, but since a couple weeks ago, we have been seeing some bearish pressure coming into the market. In my opinion, is a positive thing. The market needs to breathe. We're seeing some consolidation. It's great to see because we're going to be setting up for our next strong push to the upside in a nice trending healthy market. It's good to have these nice pauses. Gets you the ability to kind of reallocate capital in places that you think is undervalued compared to maybe some of the other investments you've had in the prior months. So going to be now jumping into the charts here. Just wanted to touch on how we went from extreme greed into greed, fear, and then extreme fear here. So trying to understand the markets overall in terms of not just charts, the psychology is important as well. So we want to start off this video looking at the weekly chart all the way dating back from 2011. This is BLX. To give it a little bit of perspective, because we're in extreme fear, I'm assuming some people are a little bit hesitant or worried or maybe not believing that the bull run will continue. We've seen in the past, we've had great opportunities where we had nice structures form, we had a breakdown to the downside, and then we ripped right back up, breaking resistances, holding supports, and then continuing the bullish, really the bullish push in the overall bull run. And I think we're kind of seeing that right now where we've topped. We had that nice ascending zone. We were potentially thinking of a melt up, but we had a breakdown, and now we're just consolidating. But and a lot of people are thinking, where you get the 200,000, 250? It's not too far away if you're looking at the previous runs we've had in the past. As the market cap increases, it's going to be harder to increase similar to prior, just because when you have a larger market cap, it takes more to move the market. There's only so many individuals, funds, really that will invest in BTC primarily. So we will obviously inevitably see a point where it will taper off. Like, hopefully everyone understands the bell curve theory there. So we're going to be looking at a smaller time frame. I just wanted to have a little bit of perspective. This was just taken from the previous run right here, and then we just moved it right here. We can kind of see, obviously you can't just extrapolate exactly what happened in the past and then present it to what will happen in the future. I have no idea. No one knows, but that's where a lot of people are kind of getting the end of November, December, and we saw last time November, December was when we had the previous peak there as well, and same as last peak. So there's a very, very strong trend. I guess this was in summer here. We have a very strong trend of the two previous peaks of the 2013-2014 peak and the 2017-2018 that many people remember. And we do think that there's going to be a 21-22 peak, and that's why there is a lot of discussion within our community, within the entire cryptocurrency ecosystem, that there will probably potentially be a peak around that winter time. And we've also seen in the stock market, summers are usually a little bit more quiet, whereas the winter is a lot more volatile on average. So hopefully that does play into the cryptocurrency market, because that is how we're positioning ourselves, or at least myself, within my investing kind of outlook at least. So now we're going to look at a smaller time frame. So this is, let's just start from the 2-day. We've had this nice ascending zone that broke to the downside. This was a potential melt up that we did not see. And then we are currently holding that previous low with a slightly lower low, and that's why we think we can see our next potential formation. So let's get our snip and then discuss exactly what we're going to be looking at right here. So Hopefully everyone understands this ascending wedge that we were potentially going to squeeze up in. 1, 2, 3, and then that was the option number A, but it did not break. Option number B was the breakdown, and that's exactly what we saw. And then from the option B, we then go into our potential third option, which is this guy right here. And then the fourth option in option B is something we'll talk about a little bit later. But our first option is if we hold this series of lower lows, as we can see. If we take this off, we can see that there's a series of lower lows, very well respected resistance, support, and then this first major zone, second major zone, and then we see a third major zone hold right here. That's going to be our series of lower lows, very well respected overall. And then we see a series of lower highs as well. So how the formation is going to be structured is we're going to see something similar to this. And that's going to be a great opportunity because we saw the initial push all the way from, let's say, 11, 12 Ks when it really started to really ramp up, all the way up until the 60K range. That's a massive push. We're going to have to, and this was a great opportunity to get along like in the 32, 31 range like we were talking about. And then we see this nice consolidation here, and in my opinion it's a great opportunity. We're seeing a little bit of a flush here where the weak hands who are just way too impatient are getting out of the market, and then the people who are a lot more patient are just waiting, anticipating for this to inevitably break out. And then looking at the actual wedge formation, hopefully everyone understands what we're looking for in a wedge. We see a nice push, we see a 1, we see a 2, and then we see a 3, and then you're looking for that nice, maybe there's a nice previous resistance or previous support right here, and then we see a nice zone of confluence somewhere along here. And once we see that break in zone of confluence, that's where the highest probability continuational push is going to be continuing from that zone. If we get a retest and a confirmation, that's going to be the highest point where the sellers are the weakest and the buyers are the strongest in terms of confidence. So we see one rejection at the top here. We see the second one right here. We do need one more because we see the first and then the second. We do need one more here for the third rejection before we get a confirmation of this formation. So we do need to have a little bit of patience here, but that is completely all right as that continuation of the patience is just going on. We're just going to be waiting for that third final hump, I guess you could say, wave, until we get that break. Now we could see a slightly light wave, and that would be a formation where it goes from a descending wedge into a triangle where you get an ascending support to hold. In that case, you would then have this zone here, and then you could fizzle out and then break, or you could just hold within that ascending support and then squeeze and break up that way. So there are multiple options, but that's going to be the first real option for the descending wedge. Second option is if we break this major level of support, that's going to leave a tremendous amount of people, in my opinion, worried, fearful, uncertain about the overall market, leaving them to sell because they want to hold on to their profits that they've purchased, maybe somewhere along the journey from 10K to where we currently are right now, or even before. Looking at this current situation right here, if we do break this zone, in my opinion, we're going to have a quick rip down and then a spike back up, and then it's going to absolutely rip, where there's going to be a ton of people who are going to be worried, fearful, because oh my god, the bull market has ended, and then it's going to rip up. They're going to be super upset because they sold like a third of the way into the bull market, or even a quarter, because the parabolic move really does take up the majority of the appreciation. So then that's going to be, in my opinion, the second option for this descending wedge. I think it's less probable, but if it does absolutely start to dump, breaking the around 44K, 45K zone, that's going to be a point where you just have to stay patient. I'm not definitely going to be looking for any leverage, like try to catch the needle or try to catch the knife. Does not make sense. Thread the needle, catch the knife is what I was trying to say. Not going to do any of that, but obviously when it starts to gain that buy pressure coming back in, you got to trust that that buy pressure is going to continue. So that's going to be the overall outlook for the multiple situations that we're looking at. And then when we're jumping into the smaller time frames, we see a nice potential double bottom here. So what we're looking for in our first option, if we are able to hold, is this being that bottom. We form a potential double bottom right here. We break above this double bottom formation. We'll have a target of around right here. If we're able to get that zone to validate for that third resistance, this is number 1, this is number 2. If we get that third validation where we get that double bottom, and then we get a slight low, and then we can maybe potentially form that symmetrical triangle that we talked about. So not a whole lot more to talk about on the smaller time frames here. There is a lot of support from the previous key level of lower highs, as well as the main level of support that we saw right here around the 44-45K zone. So I don't expect it to fall, but if we do, we have to remain patient. We have to remain, and in my opinion, bull biased, because that's why we initially looked at that large perspective chart on BLX at the start of the video, because having perspective really is an important thing when you are trading a very volatile market like cryptocurrencies and BTC, like we're talking about right here. So we're going to be looking at one last thing, actually the stock market, which is a little bit different because we did touch on it a little bit on the TikTok, but a lot of people thought that Elon was the person to make May 12th such a bloody day in terms of the push to the downside. He obviously had a tweet where he said that BTC is not eco-friendly, basically. His points aren't really valid. There's a lot of people who commented on it, but he basically says that proof of stake is too harmful to the environment, proof of work, is too harmful for the environment, and he may be looking at proof of stake. He may be looking just at a more efficient blockchain system. He's partnering with devs with Doge, so we'll see how it goes, but I think proof of stake would be a better way to go. If you have not taken the opportunity to stake any coins, some lucrative opportunities out there. So we're going to look at the stock market here. 12th was when we had that big meltdown. Let's just zoom in here. What day was the major breakdown when we broke below this major level of support? Look how strong this was. Previous resistance turned 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and once it broke down below this zone on May 12th, we had a huge red candle. That was a tremendous amount of confidence lost in the overall market. Now, yes, theoretically, you could say that Elon also impacted the traditional markets as well. I would rather look at it in BTC is just creating its normal market pushes. It's not like a 10% move down is anything but normal for Bitcoin. It is completely normal to have a 10, even 20% move down. It's just a very volatile market, and if you're looking at the fear that we saw within the stock market on the 12th, in my opinion, it makes sense that you're going to see some fear within the cryptocurrency markets as well. There's not a tremendous amount of correlation between the S&P and BTC, but in my opinion, they are still viewed as risk on assets. If you see a massive dump in the stock market, you are probably going to see a very similar type of dump in the cryptocurrency market, at least in the major assets like Bitcoin and Ethereum. Some of the other more niche, I would say more niche projects might be a little less correlated and kind of in their own realm. Many of the new tokens actually have a very, very high tax rate when you're transacting. So then bots or large institutions or large, I guess it's not hedge funds, but people with significant capital would not want to trade them because it costs so much for a transaction. So it's usually like smaller retail investors and traders just with a large community actually to pump up a coin. But regardless, I think that's why we did see that push to the downside, not because of Elon tweeting it. Maybe that played a very small factor, but I just think that there was a little bit of fear on an uncertainty within the markets that day in general, and risk on assets had a little bit of a slight push to the downside. I do still think that the S&P and BTC are still looking very bullish. There is talks, obviously, with the tax increases that is going to be hurting the overall stock market, but I still think that is obviously still in discussion, and I don't think it's going to be impacting it to a point where it's going to be really pushing it to the downside. So we'll be looking at the charts, we'll be looking at the news, but as of right now, the overall momentum, in my opinion, is still continuing to the upside. BTC has a couple of options, but we're going to remain very patient, and we're going to be looking at BTC, Ethereum, and then the S&P and many other macro asset analysis tools that we use in order to better understand the market. So hopefully you got some good value from this. I wanted to keep it a little bit shorter, don't want to drag it too long. If you do think that there is a particular asset that we should take a look at, or maybe there's like a different altcoin that you think we should take a look at, please drop it in the comments. We'd love to take a look at it and then kind of give you our 2 cents, or just take a look at it. Obviously, if it's a great opportunity, I'm very much willing to invest or trade whatever if it is a good opportunity. So hopefully everyone did enjoy it. Until next time, have a good one, traders.